Oh, that's your kid, Drew?
That's the cat, man.
The cat. I know the cat or a kid.
Oh, man, kid in one room, cat over here wreaking havoc in the other, man.
Long as they ain't fighting each other, I guess.
True.
All right. Once again, it's on. We are running with WARR, and that is some of the best basketball talk you will get online right here. WARR on YouTube live, and soon to be on WARR on Anchor. You'll get our podcast version of this coming up tomorrow, should be. But right now we're doing it live about in the middle of the Thursday games here, TNT. If you're checking out those TNT games, come rock with us for a little bit. Halftime up in Milwaukee now, LA in the Bucks. Come rock with us for a little while, and we're gonna talk about the latest that's going on in the NBA. Also sprinkle in a little college talk as well on NCAA and maybe in a little bit of a WNBA as well. I know Josh got a little something coming up on the WNBA that he want to talk about. So yeah, we're gonna hit quite a few bases on this one. As usual, I got my runners with me, man. My full-time runners, Josh and Drew. Check them out with their new tag, their new online tags. Much more. I mean, both of y'all. Well, Drew, yours not as. I guess yours is shorter, but you got the hat. You got the lower. The
little underscores. I hate the underscores.
Yeah,
I hate them.
And Josh got this more official thing. He trying to do. I guess make the brand a little more official. So I ain't mad at him.
Mm-hmm.
But we also got our man Gabriel making a return run with us, man. Chris isn't gonna be here this week, so we glad to have a guest in substitute, and definitely our man Gabe is one of our best guests. So welcome him back, and we gonna go do a little bit more. We did quite a bit last week, but we're gonna go back into the Harden trade and everything because Gabriel, of course, has spent quite a bit of time covering Houston and everything, and covering Harden. So we're gonna talk a little bit about that later as well. But first, before I go into anything, I want to shout out everyone who watched my interview with Noah Eagle over the weekend. I interviewed him primarily because he did the Bears Nickelodeon broadcast on the Bears Saints Nickelodeon broadcast, but it wound up being Runnin adjacent because he's the radio announcer for the Clippers, and of course his dad Ian is longtime announcer for the Nets. So it was a lot of good basketball talk that we went across in that interview. So if you haven't checked it out yet, go look in our videos on YouTube. And definitely check that out. I think y'all will enjoy that if you like what we do here. But we talk about teams that are really buzzing right now, and teams that are listed in a lot of headlines. Those are about two of the best ones right now: the Nets and the Clippers. Along with the Lakers and such, of course. But definitely him and his dad are pretty excited, and the chances, not. Though maybe a little slim, but them meeting in the finals, could be a possibility. Clippers been playing pretty well, and of course the Nets are looking like, even though we got, let's start on that game last night with the Nets and the Cavs. That was a pretty interesting game. How much of that did y'all catch last night?
I caught all of it. I had it on league pass. It was a hell of a game from start to finish.
Yeah, I mean, what did you think, man? Sexton really that has to be his signature game so far of his career. We get the 2 overtimes, and I watched a lot of the replay they replayed on NBA TV this afternoon. But it was, like you said, Gabe, it was a hell of a game, man. But what do you think? It's the first game, of course, that we see the entire Big Three with the Nets. So I think the haters probably There's probably some haters out there who's like, "Oh, here we go. They giving up 140 points. You know, you got all three of them on the court." But what were your thoughts? You say you saw the whole game. What were your thoughts on it?
My thoughts on it was you had three superstars out there who, through various spurts showed their ability. Is the reason why they some of the top three isolation scorers in the game. I thought Kyrie had a hell of a performance. However, they also showed their inefficiencies and weaknesses as well. You got 2 out of 3 guys, particularly Kyrie and Harden, who are going to be put on the spot more than ever before, having to be out there by themselves on an island to defend, in one-on-one situations without the presence of a big being there. You could tell that the loss of Derek Allen, although you understand why you have to make the trade for James Harden, that's going to be a huge hole for them to fill in the interior. And even though they got 3 roster spots currently open, at some point, they're going to have to seek to get a center. I thought there were moments where they were defensively pretty well throughout like the latter part of the fourth quarter and early portions of overtime. But when Colin Sexton is able to get, to any spot he wants on the floor, it only makes you wonder defensively, how can this team hold up come playoff time? I think offensively, they have all the pieces in place to where they should have a ticket to the finals punch. If they come out each and every night, they're 130 points, damn near every night. But at the same time, if they really want to get over the hump and get that gold ball, they're going to have to get enough stops down the end and late games if they want to get that.
Yeah, possessions are going to be much more critical in the playoffs. And they can't take off as much as they're going to be able to take off during a lot of these regular season games going forward. They're going to have to lock down, and they're going to have to have somebody who can regularly protect that rim. So, yeah, I definitely see what you said there, Gabe. Drew, Josh, y'all got any thoughts on that game and the fallout?
Yeah, I mean, this is the first game of the big 3. So you can't expect super high results or high expectations, at least for basic off of first game. I was watching, and listening to all these people today talking about how, since Kyrie then came back, they lost the game. This is proof they gotta get rid of Kyrie and all this other stuff. Like, people, slow your roll, slow down, take a chill pill, relax. Just one game, baby, just one game. We still got a whole another 70-something games to go. And on top of that, if anything, this is a lesson for the Nets because the game not only showed that, down the stretch, who the ball really should be going to, which we know should be Kevin Durant, but the last final 2 possessions of those overtimes, the ball was in Kyrie Irving and James Harden's hands. We know at the end of the day that should be in Kevin Durant's hands. So that's number 1. Number 2 is the fact that they're going to go through growing pains, not just because of the big 3. It's a whole new coaching staff with a rookie coach. Like, we have to remember that Steve Nash is in his first year coaching. This is probably one of the first games where down the stretch, he literally had to find plays and defensive schemes to slow down a team that, quite frankly, they might have took for granted. Because the Cavs was the worst offensive team in the league right now. So to have that type of game, they thought for them to have this type of game, if anything, it's just a lesson. Just for them to learn and grow from. It's the first time of the big 3. You got a rookie head coach who, Steve Nash is to let and the skill set to coach, but he doesn't know what it's like to be in these type of predicaments like that, especially since he came from a Golden State Warriors team who's used to blowing teams out by like 25 plus. So you gotta learn at some point. That's all this is. It's just a teaching lesson. So everybody just kick back, relax, take your drinks, and just chill. Just relax. It's only first game. We'll see if what comes down when it comes to the playoffs. Just relax a little bit.
Right. And plus, you mentioned Cleveland having their issues, but Sexton isn't one of them right now. They got the backcourt, the Sexland.
Oh yeah, Sexland is killing.
Yeah, so the Sexland got the wet jumpers out there. So let's you can't you can't ignore them.
They locked up too. The Knicks had a serious problem with their 2-3 zone last night.
Yeah, they still got to get used to playing with each other, but
and I think that,
and I say that after Sexland as well. I gotta get that in my head. Drew,
so going off of that, mentioning that Gabe about them having trouble with the 2-3 zone. Who was who was flashing to the high post for them? Was it DJ? Was it Durant? You remember?
It was a couple times I saw Kyrie flash up to like the top of the key, get some fadeaway jump shots and easy looks. You know, they had moments where they were breaking it, but I felt like you really had Durant and Harden trying to get adjusted to playing with Kyrie and getting the feel for his game. But there were moments I felt like where Durant was passing, and also moments where I felt like James was passing. Like if I'm not mistaken, he only took 2 shots in the first half of that game and only scored 2 points. You know, he was really being more of a facilitator. But I think in order for this experiment to work, one thing that did stand out to me was that you had Kyrie on the ball a lot. I think in order for the experiment with this trio to work, you're gonna have to see Harden running a 1 and Kyrie being more willing to play off of the ball at the 2 spot, which you know he showed in various instances last night that he can knock down catches, shoot triples, and Durant, who's more than willing to play off the ball, either at the 4 or the 5, because there's gonna be some times and nights where he's gonna have to play the 5 with them until they get, you know, someone off that buyout market, either JaVale McGee, who may be available down the road, or Hassan Whiteside, if not a Dwayne Dedman, who's on the couch right now. And I think a lot of teams, personally, such as Brooklyn, really should be called.
Yeah, I totally agree with that. To go along with what you guys said, it's first game, man. Like it's a lot of things that got to get figured out in terms of that 2-3 zone. I like to see, like you said, James with the ball in his hand and let KD flash up to the high post, because that's the key to beating that zone. You get that ball to the middle and let him be able to make decisions based off that. And who better on that team to do that than him?
Yeah.
As far as figuring things out, you know, there's a lot of situational things that are going to be needed to figure out, you know, during matchups and, you know, clutch situations and stuff. But in a more general sense, do you guys think that there's going to need to be like a delineation of who's 1 and who's 2 and who's 3? Or do you think they can all, you know, coexist with that being sort of a, you know, sort of switching or sort of be a nebulous theme where they're all number ones and in their minds they're all number ones, you know, but can they exist that way, or would it have to be some sort of line set? Because a lot of people like to go back to the formation of the Miami Big Three, and a lot is said about how, you know, Wade eventually sort of backed down for LeBron, and LeBron was sort of became known as the guy down there, while Bosh, you know, let him. He had less ego involved, and he allowed himself to be essentially the number 3. You know, was some sort of reckoning like that have to happen in New Jersey for them to, Brooklyn, for them to, you know, be at their best? Or do you think it's not necessary?
So I don't think it's necessary, because these guys are intelligent, man. And going back to Harden and KD, they have experience playing with each other. The variable being Kyrie. I think if anything, it's going to happen organically, you know, just by the results and how the flows of different games are going. And that's a hell of a thing to be able to fall back on, where you have 3 guys that at any point, you know, they can go off. You can't double them. They'll never be able to. You can't double those guys, not just because of those 3, but because you got Joe Harris, who's a knockdown shooter. So I just think it's going to happen organically. It might be different guys, different nights, depending on who's got it going and the matchups, especially. And if you got Durant playing the 5, nobody can guard Durant anyway. But what 5 is going to be guarding him? And if they're playing Milwaukee, how often did Giannis guard him? You know, that kind of rubs me the wrong way, kind of getting off topic a little bit. But Giannis, man, if you're going to be the 2-time MVP or a 2-time Defensive Player of the Year, you got to guard the main guy, especially at your position. I know some of that falls on Coach Boyd, but I'm getting off topic, though. What you guys?
That stood out when they played the other night. I watched that game, too, when they played Milwaukee. There were a lot of times on switches when Middleton was guarding him and he came up, he would drop back in the coverage in the paint. And and he was picking Middleton apart. And it's like, at some point, you got to come out there.
Yeah, and Middleton is not a bad defender by any means, but who's your best defender on your team?
Right.
I look at it like this: Godzilla, King of Monsters. right? I don't know if y'all into that stuff. I am. That's my movie, right? I mess with it. Godzilla was that dude, right? But the overall concept was the fact that there was multiple kings, that came for the throne. But at the end of the day, the one true king in Godzilla overtook it all, right? Brooklyn got 3 kings. 3, you got KD, you got James Harden. But at the end of the day, they know who the real king is. That's Kevin MF Durant. So therefore, Durant gonna get that ball. Durant is going to be the guy, the go-to guy down the stretch. Once they finally get it in their brains that that's gonna happen, the team will thrive. And it's honestly, that's more with Kyrie than anything, because Kyrie, even though he's used to playing that 2 guy, he always has to have the ball in his hands. James Harden has the history of being a third option in a thriving offense, back to his OKC days, and the fact that he was able to do that with Kevin Durant at that time. So because of that experience, I'm pretty sure Harden wouldn't have a problem adjusting his game to the point where when he gets it, he knows what he can be efficient in doing what he's supposed to do. The real question is, how is Kyrie going to react, as whether he plays on the ball or not, as ideally at times, especially the stretch, a number 3 guy? How is he going to handle that? And that's the biggest thing. I think it's not going to be an issue, because at the end of the day, they know Kevin Durant is the Godzilla of this thing. He's going to win this thing. He's the guy. But as far as how is it going to thrive and mesh together, that's just something we're going to have to see over time. But when it comes down to the nitty gritty, the ball going to be in KD's hands. No,
so you got KD. You got KD as Godzilla. I was going to say he's got Mothra's reach though. That's what I was thinking.
He does. He does.
and I guess Harden. He's like what's the little buggy one that the little bug one? I forgot what that name was. I guess that would be Harden, but yeah, that's a good conversation.
Rescue when necessary.
Yeah, I also like the concept of MF Durant as opposed to as a salute to MF Doom. Maybe somebody got to knock him in the face and put a mask on him.
I like that better than Durantula, man. I never was a fan of that one, man. I like that one.
Or the weight of the server or whatever. Yeah.
The Slim Reaper, he's had so many nicknames.
The Slim Reaper, I would have, if he could have kept with that, I would have gone with that. But he didn't like that, I guess. So, but but yeah, we talk about like LA looking like right now they're pulling away from Milwaukee, and Drew, you got into a little bit of a rant. You were starting to get into a little bit of a rant with Milwaukee there, but do you think that's their main issue right now? Is that they're a team that does have the 2-time defensive player of the year, but they don't seem to have much of a perimeter lockdown. They don't really have a perimeter lockdown guy, and they struggle. They're struggling to stop top teams still. It's like, and they like I say, they struggle to stop top teams, and it seems like when they face top teams, there's always some issue that they can't abide by or can't account for when it comes to, stopping teams like that. What's your thoughts on that?
So I'm gonna give the caveat of every team is still kind of figuring things out. Milwaukee Big Fish addition is Drew Holiday, who is a very, very good defender, very heady defender. So I think they're just trying to figure it out. The main thing I just want to see is I want Coach Bud to put his best defender on the other team's best player. Like, I just don't understand, man. I don't understand what's missing with that.
In this case tonight, you'd have him playing LeBron. LeBron had at least 17 that's on the first half. And they said that I saw, when I had the sound up, they had, LeBron was essentially playing all his minutes when Giannis was on the floor. So, I mean, is that the type of thing you have to look at that? If you're the Bucks, it'd be like, man, LA is restricting LeBron's minutes. They're not playing. He's playing as few minutes as he's played at any time in his career, but he's relishing the minutes that he's getting with Giannis out there. That's not a good sign.
No, it's not. It's not. They got to figure some things out, man. Maybe Coach Bud feels more comfortable with Middleton on the main guy and kind of Giannis playing off of that and just helping out in different situations. But it just was seen to me that, again, you're going to put your best defender on the guy that the other team is trying to get that ball to. He's long, super athletic. He's strong. I don't see any reason, unless there's foul trouble, in future games. That's the only reason I would see not putting him on that guy.
Hey,
But that's the thing
Gabe,
about
Josh,
Coach
y'all got anything?
Budenholzer. Like,
I got a lot of
yeah,
issues
like
with
that.
Milwaukee personally.
Josh, go ahead, then, Gabe. Yeah, Gabe gonna go in. So, Josh, you go first, though.
But I was just gonna say, based off the Drew's point, that's the problem with Coach Budenholzer. Like that was one of his critiques of his coaching ability, his lack of adjustment, and that's what bid him always in the playoffs. That's why he never gone far in the playoffs. Is because of that. I think Budenholzer is just a regular season coach that over time he figures some things out to get through the season. But when you come to the playoffs, he ain't taking you much further. You got to do that yourself, and that's always been the knock on on his coaching ability. So having that translate with already the defensive issues that the Bucks have, and the fact that when the games are tight, he still ain't got a closer. They don't have anyone that can go to down the stretch to shoot the ball and get you a bucket to keep the team afloat. That's the biggest thing. You sold your whole farm on Drew Holiday, which is a hell of a player, but he ain't a closer. He's not someone that's supposed to get you buckets down the stretch in the final 2 or 3 minutes of the game. So, and Chris Middleton ain't your guy. He's not that guy for that.
They got a number 2 and 2 number 3s.
Right, they got 2 number 3s, but no
Yeah.
number 2s. How do you fill that void? Especially since Giannis, as a number 1 option, does not want to be in that final moments. That's not part of his game. So, if you don't have a closer or someone you can go to down the stretch, these tight games you're gonna be struggling to get through, and you just got to hope that these role players and your third options, or even Giannis, is willing to willing to take that next step to get you over the hump. Because right now that ain't gonna cut it when you got 3 people on one team in Brooklyn that can do that easily.
Mm-hmm.
Gabe, you said the Nets got their tickets punched already. So, and you say you got a lot of issues with Milwaukee. So go ahead, go ahead.
For one, when I look at Milwaukee's identity as a team, I have a lot of questions. When they first came onto the scene, they were known as a top 5, defensive team, a team that was going to get your butt, 48 minutes every single night with Malcolm Brogdon there and Eric Bledsoe and Giannis, leading the show with Brook. Their game was to bait you into taking threes and seeing whether or not, you can beat them from beyond the arc. They took away the paint. Well, when a team is on, what do you do? Such as how Miami was when they played them in the semifinals last year down the bubble. What do you do? Another issue I have with the team is I understand Josh's point in regards to, Coach Bud being a regular season coach. But one thing I will give Bud credit for, he's been there and done that in championship rounds, albeit as an assistant under Pop in San Antonio. I just wondered, like you said, do they have the horses to really go through down the stretch? You have a guy like Giannis who loves to run up and down the court, and he definitely sets and dictates the tempo for the team and the way they play offensively. But when you get into the playoffs and everything is operated and based around a half court, you need a guy that's a bucket getter, and I don't see it. And when I view this team right now and I look at the roster construction, I'm saying to myself, man, if it's a way that the Bucks could somehow find a way to get a vet like Lou Williams there, alongside of a Chris Middleton, who has shown a growth and development in isolation situations, being able to get his off the dribble. You get another closer in there besides Giannis, I think they may have a puncher's chance, but I still don't think it's enough. And when I look at Giannis's game just in general, yes, he's made some improvements, shooting the 3 ball here and there, but it's becoming clearly obvious to me that at this stage in his career, in order for him to be his best self and to become a championship caliber player, he's gonna have to develop a post-up game. Because shooters don't get better at this age. You know, like you learn how to shoot a ball when you like 12, 13 years old. It's like it's only so much room for growth and development at this stage. You don't won 2 MVPs without it. So that shows that you're a hell of an athlete. But you have to figure out a way to get in your most efficient positions as much as possible. Somewhat like what we're seeing with Zion Williamson in New Orleans right now. Shot selection is gonna be key.
The messed up thing is, I think one of the biggest losers, if not the biggest loser from the Harden deal, was probably Milwaukee. This man just signed an extension, and then Harden comes and plays with Durant and Kyrie. It's like, man, the East just got that much tougher to get through. You still got to deal with Boston, who I think, if anybody, could probably give the Nets more gold than anybody else in the Eastern Conference. But just taking it back to Milwaukee, I feel like they may have missed their opportunity. Not necessarily all due to them, because they had, like everybody else, they had to go through the pandemic last year. They were the team to kick off the Jacob Blake, not forfeiture, but yeah. So there's a lot of things going on last year, and now their window is looking real small, man. Looking real small with that group over there in Brooklyn.
Yeah, the tough thing too is that you can't necessarily say that like the Nets are gonna be a one and done team. Like the Nets could last as they are for a few years with those guys. So like over the course of this extension that Giannis has. So, I wouldn't shut down the window yet on them, but like you say, Drew, it's got a lot tougher. And,
I want to say that trio got 2 more years left on each one of their deals with an option. So we'll see.
Yeah,
we'll see.
And like who knows how Giannis will feel in 2 years himself, looking at the environment around him, or it's gonna be tough, man. It's they got to figure out what they got to do, man, and it probably does come down to like y'all say, getting a real number 2 or number 1, possibly a 1A at least that can match up with Giannis and do some things that he can't. But I'm really intrigued by what you said, Gabriel, about him having, I wonder if he will show the wherewithal before he gets. There may come a point where his knees are going to tell him, I need to develop a back to the basket game anyway. But I wonder if before that, if he will have the knowledge to say, yeah, maybe I should make my game make things a little easier on myself and develop that back to the basket game, get maybe a little jump hook thing going or something, or at least do something where defenses can collapse on me and I can maybe distribute to any number of shooters who may be on my team out there, DiVincenzo or Holiday or whoever can exist on the 3-point line and maybe make things a little easier on them and give them some more open shots instead of just being at the top of the key and being like a gazelle trying to work off the dribble and get to a spot beneath the free throw line and doing all that work. It's a lot more work than it would be. Yeah,
it's all about pushing the pace with him. And these teams, they get smart. That's why you got video scouts and guys, recording your every move every night you play in the league. It's like they know now when you're driving, we're building a wall. And we're going to force you to give up the rock. So at this point in time, the way that you were getting the majority of your buckets, you was getting at least 14 out of your 28 points, just pushing the ball off a rebound and just slamming it on guys. That's not going to be happening as much now. So what's your adjustment? Then too, one thing that I think is overlooked with him a lot, everybody always talks about the 3-point shot or the lack thereof. It's like you shooting 1 for 10 from the line again. And as much as he gets to the line, when you're a gifted scorer, you're getting to the line at least 8 to 10 times a night. You have to find a way to improve that as well. He's in his like 8th or 9th season in the league. At this point and stage of his career, he has to do some serious soul searching because it's like you committed to staying in Milwaukee. 5-year deal. You want to win your title in Milwaukee. They putting all these pieces around you as the lead dog and guy. And while you may need a guy that's a walking bucket getter alongside of you, you have to play your part too to try and figure out a way as to how you can become the most dominant player in the league, bar none, without question. Because people pay attention and they look at this. You know, you start leading your team the best records in the regular season back-to-back years, and you don't come up with the gold ball, man, the media is all over you.
Man, that's well said, man. And you know, I said a little bit earlier, like a lot of pressures on Milwaukee to provide the sort of environment that could allow Giannis to win, but we can't overlook Giannis's role in this whole thing too. Like you said, he has to raise his game still. He's not a finished product. He's got to raise his game to the point where, you know, whatever he needs around him, whether he needs a little bit or a lot more, he's still got to give more of himself to be able to be known as a championship guy. At some point, he has to break through a wall, and he has to force things onto his opponents, whoever that opponent is going to be, and you know, show himself as a true champion. So it's gonna be interesting to see if that development happens, if that evolution happens in this game, and you know, whether it leads to any type of championship breakthrough in Milwaukee, or if it leads to a dramatic breakup. You know, it's going to be one or the other. Apparently, that's the situation. I see what Josh is looking betting.
Yeah, he out of there. He was just collecting his bread. And, you know, at the same time, I mean, I've heard from the reports from people that covered him that he really does like Milwaukee. Milwaukee fits his style and things of that sort. So he really does like the city and he loves the fans. But at the same time, like Gabe mentioned, you know, if you are the number one guy on this team with the biggest contract in league history, there's going to be a lot of responsibility for you to develop your game. If I'm him, I'm calling Hakeem Olajuwon, get that footwork, get that presence together. I'm calling Hakeem Olajuwon to get that low post presence as well as still that versatility against other big guys. I'm calling 3-point shooters like Kyle Korver, whom you play with, Ray Allen, whomever can help you develop your game on the outside from a shooting perspective, as well as give you the post game presence that you're lacking of right now, but can really easily develop. If you do your part and Milwaukee somehow fixes theirs, because that was one of my biggest critiques of the Jrue Holiday trade. I know they had to do what they can to get players, but you sold your whole farm. If you waited, you could have got someone like a Chris Paul coming to your team. If you waited, you could have got somebody like a James Harden coming to your team to pair with them. But you jumped the gun and got Jrue Holiday and sold the whole farm, which to respect, I understand the situation, and you know that type of move was necessary. But just like Giannis got to develop, front office got to be smart too and trying to figure out how to get other superstars to come to Milwaukee because they're not coming willingly. So,
but they were pressured. Yeah, they were pressured by that early December deadline that he had with the you know, with the re-up. So yeah, and I agree with you. Yeah, what you say, Drew?
No, I was saying they didn't have that luxury necessarily because they had to show him that, look, man, we're trying to do something to develop something really good here. So they had to kind of, these short-term moves had to be made.
Yeah, definitely. That was the case.
Bradley Beal over there.
Maybe that's the
guy that they may look back and say a couple months from now when he does get traded, like, man, really let him walk away and by giving away a war chest of picks, and we could have probably had not only just Jrue, but we could have had this guy with us, who's a bona fide all-star scorer.
Definitely. And when you look at what's going on in Washington, because I want to go into some standings watching for a second here. You know, I was looking at the standings earlier, sort of setting up the Bulls section of the show. But when you look at the East, you know, that's the bottom of the East there, Washington. and so they're likely going to be sellers, and that's their big piece, the Bill there. So he could be a guy who can definitely make a big change in the league for some team, make a contending team into an ultra contender, or a middle ranked team into a more of a contender. We'll see how that goes. When you look at those, like I said, they're at the bottom. That Washington team, 3-8, Pistons 3-11. They're lottery watching, but it's like the rest of the East is pretty competitive overall. Like there's like a 2 game uh, difference between the team right above them, who is the Raptors. Interestingly enough, 5-9, and those Cavaliers who we mentioned earlier, 7-7. They're tied with the Hawks, but I guess they got a little bit of advantage, so they're in the 6th spot right now. But you got a little bit of a gulf between the rest of that conference, that bulk of the conference, and those top 5 teams, starting with the Nets, who are 9-7, and above them you got the Pacers at 8-6 at 4, Celtics 8-5 at 3, the 9-5 Bucks are at 2, and number one right now 76 is 10-5, number one in the East. I bigged up the Sixers a little bit last week, and Josh gave me some funny looks. But the Sixers, man, they beat the Celtics yesterday, and the Celtics, they was doing a little humbugging about Embiid, getting to the line a lot. But I think that's the type of thing. If you're a big man like Embiid, you need to be getting yourself to the line and contributing points through the free throw. That should be a good deal. A good deal of your points should be coming from the line, from getting to the line and getting and making those contributions. And I just think he's playing at another level this year, more consistently. And we're not hearing about him being off having to take games off and being on injured reserve or whatever. He's coming through, and I think that's making a difference for those Sixers. I don't know if they're going to remain the number 1 seed or a top 3 seed, but they're definitely a top 4 team in the East, and I think they're gonna be pretty competitive going forward. But I don't know, what do you guys think of that whole top tier of the East right now? Looking at those top 5 teams.
When I look at the East right now and the top 4 teams, I think it's Brooklyn, I think it's Boston, I think it's Philly, and I say that 4th spot is up for grabs right now. You got a lot of teams that have been competing and fighting for that over the last few years. I would say, I think Philly has gotten off to a hot start. In large part not only due to the play of Embiid, but when I look at their schedule, just personally, like they haven't really played. And I understand you can only play who's in front of you, but they haven't really played the elite of the elite yet. And I think that's the part. Yeah, that's the big question mark with them. Like, I want to see how they look when they play Brooklyn. I want to see how they look when they play Boston, tomorrow night on ESPN. Because like when I look at Boston, those young guys are growing over there. Like Jason Tatum and Jaylen Brown's having an all-star season himself. Granted, Embiid is having an MVP candidacy, but I want to know if he can do that when it's the most important time of the year and you get closer to playoff time consistently. I want to see, if those guys that they can trust and they brought in there, the Warriors brought in there to make big time shots, such as Danny Green and others, will do so like they have in playoffs past. And Seth Curry, because Ben, I know he's gonna be Ben. He's gonna play his style, but in a half-court system, if he's not willing to take threes and he's gonna be passive, he kind of becomes a non-factor in the gameplay. He plays right into the defense's hands.
Yeah. Look, I'm just looking at the schedule right quick. Looking at the numbers breakdown real quick, and this is there's 2 things that jump out at me. They are 8-1 at home, so they're taking care of business at home, which you You figure any good team would. But they're also all of their wins, all 10 of their wins will come against the East. They're 10-3 against the East. So you could say that that is a good thing that they've played well against their own conference. But like Gabe said, they may have most likely been eating on the lower half of the conference. But they haven't played anybody in the West yet. They haven't. It looks like they haven't traveled. They haven't traveled west yet. So yeah, their schedule definitely is going to take a turn coming up. So yeah, there's going to be more for them to prove. But they've gotten off to the type of start you would think that they would need, given the baggage that they carried into the season and them, working, Doc Rivers working himself into that new job and everything. Like I said, they've had the type of start that they need, but they got more to prove, and that's you can see that.
And they always play well at home. Because last year, if I'm not mistaken, they only lost 2 games at home, and they had an atrocious road record before it was time to go to the bubble. Like Philadelphia, okay. I don't know what it is, but they've always been a team. When they're in the Wells Fargo Center, they're one of the top teams in the league. Like that, that's even when fans were in the building. But when they're on the road, they struggle mightily.
Yeah, they got a good home court advantage. They got an energetic. Well, that doesn't matter this year, but when it's normal, they have a good crowd there. But it's like playing at the crib. That's good. It's good.
Yeah, and I think another key person, if you want to talk about the growth and the progression of the 76ers, you got to talk about Tobias Harris. Tobias Harris went MIA in that bubble. He went MIA in that bubble as one of the go-to guys to help get this team over the hump. And you really have to rely on him now because, like Gabriel said, if you're talking about a half-court setting, Ben Simmons already doesn't shoot. So if he's not going to shoot the ball, you're going to have to rely on Tobias Harris to be that go-to scorer. So he has to come through in big moments, what he has suspect to do. And I think this year can change because, Doc Rivers was the one coach that actually helped him excel the game and get him the max contract that he got before he left and was traded from the Clippers. But Doc Rivers got to have a lot of different things to work with in order to get this team over the hump, including the fact that he has blown 2 3-1 leads. Like, we can't forget that he was the coach of multiple 3-1 blowouts. So he has to make adjustments too, just like the players do. So putting that all together, that's gonna be a big hurdle that the team as a whole has to get over.
Yeah. I don't put a whole lot of. I know they're 10-5, and Embiid is going crazy, but I don't put a lot of stock in them advancing very far into the playoffs, just because of what everybody's talked about, just the limitations of Ben Simmons. For all his struggles, at least Giannis will somewhat keep the defense honest, and he'll take a three. He'll take multiple threes a game, whereas Ben Simmons doesn't even look to shoot outside the paint, seemingly. So I just Embiid can't do it by himself. We'll see, like you said, Josh, if Tobias Harris steps up. Gabe, how you said about Seth Curry and Danny Green, if they can make some big shots, see the development of Shake Milton, how that all shakes out, no pun intended. I'm actually kind of interested to see if Indiana, once Karis LeVert comes back, because I think they found a growth on his.
Yeah. Has there been any more news on that? Have y'all heard anything?
I haven't seen it, but I haven't really been looking for it.
He's gonna be out for. They say he could be out for a couple of months, so that doesn't seem like he's just gonna be able to just bounce back right away. But that's a major blow to Indiana. And I was very excited to see him in Indiana with the ball in his hands, knowing how he likes to have those touches.
Yeah, that's tough. Yeah. He's had a couple of tough breaks already in his NBA career, so hopefully he can bounce back from that.
Gabe, I know you're real connected with the Rockets. Speaking of LeVert, all things being equal, not knowing what we know now, do you think they were right to go after Oladipo in that contract and the picks that they got, or would you have preferred them to keep LeVert, to hold on to LeVert, the younger player who may not be as quite the all-around player that Oladipo has proven to be, but is younger, can still score?
I think the reason why Ralph took the deal for Oladipo as opposed to just taking LeVert straight up was due to the fact that, for one, Oladipo is on the final year of his contract, and they wanted the flexibility to have those draft picks, and they got 4 first rounders, they got 4 pick swaps, all unprotected. And that was really the big win for them in that trade. You get a guy like Oladipo there, you see how it works out. Like, they don't really have an incentive to tank, because the only way they keep their first round pick that they traded away in the pick swap in the Westbrook deal, the only way they keep that is if it's a top 4 pick in the draft lottery. So it's top 4 protected. So they really have no incentive to really be tanking. But, they got a lot of guys in and out the lineup right now, due to injury and so forth like that. And the team, when you lose the top 5 player, it's not as good as it once was. Like, if they get to a point where they're in the bottom half of the West, they can seek to trade Oladipo like the 1st of March easily and get even more draft capital back on top of young players, as opposed to had they had LeVert, they would have had him on the books for a couple of years at around, I want to say, 15 to 16 million. And while I do think LeVert is a good player, his health record, even prior to the mass showing up on his kidney in the physical, to get the hard trade completed, he already had question marks, coming in as to whether or not he could stay healthy. So I think what Ralph did was take the long-term picture and say, hey, let's take the all-star, a guy that, we know can come in here right away and at least be a combo guard for us, while John Wall, is battling through his left knee issue next week, and see how it works. And this pairing works together. And if it does, see whether or not we want to sign him long term, or if we look where we're at the 1st of March and see that we're not a playoff team, we can seek to trade him to Miami or any other suitor alongside of PJ Tucker and potentially Eric Gordon to start this full on rebuild in that town.
But they're 4-9 right now. The only team worse than the West is the Timberwolves. And Gabe, what do you think overall? Starting with what they got in the trade, what do you think about where the Rockets are overall right now? Like, do you think they're in a good position?
I think they're in a much better position from a draft capital standpoint that they've been in the last several years. A lot of people forget, and I said this, on episode with you guys a couple months ago, that Houston hasn't had a 1st-round draft pick since 2015.
Yeah.
And this year, they could possibly, depending on if they have a top pick, they could possibly have 2 1st-round picks in the 2021 draft, which would be a relatively deep draft class. I think that's a plus. They had to figure out a way as to how they could map out a future in the wake of losing arguably the 2nd or 3rd greatest player in the history of that franchise. And I think while it remains to be seen whether or not they won the deal, depending on what they do with these picks, whether or not they use these picks as trade capital to get another star there, what have you, I think they went in a desolate position, sort of, but they turned, lemons in the egg. And I give Ralph Stone a lot of credit for not budging and just doing the deal right away with Brooklyn when there was little to nothing on the table in the beginning.
Yeah. It definitely turned out to be a much more interesting trade than just having a straight up Brooklyn Houston trade. Having Cleveland and Indiana worked in there as well. So, Josh, you wrote the piece last week. Like, you thought that pretty much all those teams improved themselves in some way. Go back to that piece, man, and give your thoughts on the trade. You can read that now on weareregalradio.com, by the way.
Yeah, most definitely. I think all the teams pretty much, based on the projection and trajectory that where each team is going through now, they made the right moves to improve their status in that direction. Obviously, the Nets, they're in a win now mode. So the trade for James Harden and still keep Kyrie as well as keeping Joe Harris. shooting. You didn't trade Spencer Dinwiddie, but you can resign him next offseason to a decent deal. You pretty much solidified yourself with a pretty nice core moving forward for the next couple of years. And depending on what happens with whether Kevin Durant stays or not, you still got James Harden, who's still relatively young, that could still be the star option long term to pair with Kevin Durant. So it doesn't force Kevin Durant to do a lot more than what he's already doing now, which is already impeccable since he's coming off that Achilles injury. He's looking great. Then you talking about the Rockets. Obviously, the Rockets, got all those U-Haul of picks. So, of course, you got to give them credit for that. But I think if they can keep Oladipo and if Oladipo shows positive signs, would be a good option as a combination backcourt with John Wall and having someone like Boogie Cousins who's there that can still give you and contribute here and there. But all three of them have something to prove. They're all coming off of major injuries over the years. They're all trying to be healthy, and for sure, Boogie Cousins and Oladipo, this is contract years for them. They're trying to get another big deal next year. So I think having a small big three like that in the Western Conference at least keep them afloat from maybe a playoff perspective, where at least they may be in that bottom half, but with the expansion of the play-in tournament too, they may be able to get in if they can keep it up and stay afloat. And then Indiana. They kind of figured out how to really live life without Victor Oladipo, and the fact that they got the new coach there, it was obviously time that they had to move off of him, and for them to get Karis LeVert, he's going to thrive in Indiana as the guy with the ball in his hands, pairing him with Sabonis. That's going to be and Malcolm Brogdon in that backcourt as well. I think all that's going to eventually flow in together with that new core in Indiana, and Indiana, maybe if not this year, for sure next year when everybody's healthy, it can make a little bit of noise in the Eastern Conference where they can be that number 4, potentially sneak up into that top 4 team in the East, depending on what goes on after this season. So I think each of these teams pretty much made good impacts and good trading impacts to where the direction that each team is going in, this trade specifically helped them move in that direction.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, I want to go back over to the West and do a little bit more standing watching. And then we want to talk a bit about COVID and how it's affecting the league. But first, like I say, looking at the West, like I say, you had those Rockets and the Timberwolves down there at the bottom. Kings, Pelicans, Thunder all have losing records. They're out of that's the bottom 5 of the conference. You look at that top 10, we're talking about the playing type situation. It's going to be particularly competitive, of course, in the West. The Nuggets, Mavs, both 7-7 at 9-10. Spurs, a little bit of a reawakening with them. They're a game above 500, 8-7. Grizzlies have one of the best winning streaks in the league going right now. They've won 5 in a row. They're 7-6. Trailblazers seem to go back and forth. Whenever you see them, they're 8-6, and so are the Warriors. A little bit surprising. They're number 5 in the West right now at 8-6. Suns are 8-5. We get to the top 4, and you got 3 teams with double-digit wins already in the West, as opposed to just the 1 in the East. Jazz with a 6-game winning streak, the best in the league right now. Oh no, let me go back to the East. Just make sure. Best winning streak in the league right now is the Jazz, longest one, I should say, 6 games in a row. Lakers, now it's 105-100 with Milwaukee right now. They're looking to bump themselves up to 12-4. They're 11-4 at the moment. And the Clippers are number 1 in the West right now, 11-4 with a 5-game win streak. What anything that's standing out in the West for y'all right now? Like I said, Golden State been pretty competitive. They beat the Lakers last Friday, and they're not making us regret seeing them on national TV still. And of course you got the Lakers. The Lakers are going to be there. Clippers are going to be there. But even the Clippers, I like I said, I talked to Noah about them, and Noah came in at the beginning of last season, so as their radio guy, And so he's seen a lot already with that team going through what they did in the bubble and failing like they did publicly. But they've come into this season really with a good attitude. He says that Ty Lue really has a good hold of that team, and they're playing well with it. As a unit right now. Some of their pickups have been pretty pretty sound. Luke Kennard and Serge Ibaka. They've been doing their thing. Along with those guys. Anything else that jump out with y'all about the West right now?
When I look at,
go ahead, Gabe.
Yeah, when I look at Portland, just how they can't catch a break.
Yeah, CJ McCollum.
Just when you think that run, like CJ McCollum gets hurt, Yusuf Nurkic gets hurt again, and it's that's a team that I expect, unless if Dame, and not saying that he can't because he's done it before, just goes in assassin mode, like full range assassin. I don't know if they stay afloat within the thick of the Western Conference playoff picture with those two guys that have been key cognizant in their starting unit down right now.
Yeah. Yeah, Drew, you had something?
No, I was actually Portland was going to be my point too, man. Same thing, basically, man. Just how can they stay in the mix right now with those injuries to those two top guys? Plus, they still have Zach Collins, who's out, who always seems to be injured since he's been in the NBA. And I wonder if they're setting themselves up for a similar situation as they were in a bubble. Having to fight tooth and nail just to get into the playoffs. Spending so much energy and then going up against one of the top teams and just not really having, that great of a chance, no matter what type of performances Dame and CJ put on. Because again, you're going against the beast of that conference. I'm wondering if the Mavs can sneak up a little bit higher once Luka continues to play himself into shape. Porzingis as well. He just got back, I think, 2-3 games ago. So just seeing what they could do. As we're about to talk about, COVID is taking a toll on a lot of teams. So if these teams can navigate through that en route to the playoffs, we'll see how these standings shape up at the end. Like you spoke about with the Warriors, I am very surprised about the Warriors, man. I was thinking they might mess around and finish next to last or last in their division. It's good to see Wiseman playing some ball. It's good to see Draymond back into the fold. I think he helps their team tremendously, just being the quarterback of that offense, being the veteran presence for Wiseman. Steph, of course, going off. It'll be interesting to see if they can hang on to that spot. I still think they're going to come down from that, fifth? From that fifth spot, but, remains to be seen.
Josh, you think the Clippers can continue to set the pace in the West?
Yeah, I mean, the Clippers, they did it last year. Even with all their issues, they can easily keep up the pace in the West. The problem is when that postseason comes down and adversity comes, how are you going to fight back? How are you going to take your game to that next level, which is something that we know Playoff P struggles in. He went from he goes from PG-13 to PG. I don't know what to tell you. I mean, he got to stop that, especially since he just signed that max contract this offseason, that max contract extension. He's on the line too. Kawhi Leonard, him too. I think having Ty Lue as your head coach actually levels the playing field because Lue is more of the stricter type of coach compared to Doc Rivers. He will get you in check, as we reportedly know, and he has, like I said, right now he has the locker room. I think that was the thing with Doc Rivers that was reported was the fact that he, in a way, played more of a favoritism type of role when it comes to celebrity superstars compared to the whole team as a whole. And having someone like Ty Lue who has gone through that with LeBron and has made it known that he holds everyone accountable and in check, I think that's what really made the team buy in to what he's bringing to the Clippers right now. So I think the Clippers definitely have a chance to take it to the next level. It just remains to be seen when the playoffs come, when it's really the nitty gritty of those moments. We'll see what they're made of. But for me specifically, when you're talking about the Western Conference, the Jazz are doing a hell of a thing. You got Jordan Clarkson playing right now that could potentially be your sixth man of the year. Dude's been balling as of late, and Donovan Mitchell and Rudy Gobert, really keeping those teams together as they're serving with this 6-game winning streak. And for me, one of the sleeper teams of the offseason for me that has really took things to the next level is the Phoenix Suns. They have taken an extra leap with Chris Paul as their point guard playing against Devin Booker. And DeAndre Ayton has progressed as well as the main big man. I think under Monty Williams, he's done a hell of a job really gathering that young group and grabbing the veteran leadership and presence of Chris Paul, of Jay Crowder, putting those guys with the Mikal Bridges and the Cameron Johnsons and, and already the scoring savant of Devin Booker, man. That team has made tremendous leaps from last season to even where they are, like you mentioned, I think within the 5-6 range or a top 5 range maybe of the Western Conference. So I think we have to really give Chris Paul, Monty Williams for sure, and that coaching staff a lot of credit to really building that team and really taking that team to the next level of not just staying competitive, but actually winning closer games down the stretch.
Definitely. Yeah, it's going to be interesting to see, who's going to put themselves in the best position to succeed. And, you probably figure matchups even more than in the East. The specific matchups that you get in the playoffs in the West are probably going to make a difference. I think that's probably when you look at what happened in the bubble. The Nuggets probably wound up being the last team that the Clippers wanted to see in that second round, and it wound up getting what they got out of that. So, we'll see how those teams, how everything clears out with that conference and everything. And it looks like the Lakers are going to be 12-4. I don't know if that's going to bump them up. I guess it'll bump them up above the Clippers temporarily. So that'll be, we're still looking at that LA teams being 1 and 2 probably for the most part. But we'll see if a Utah or a Phoenix can maybe get in there and make some noise as well in that top 3. So yeah, we'll see what's going on. But I want to transition over for a little bit into the COVID stuff as we talk about. And I kind of want to talk about on both the NBA and the college level because it's really weirded out the college season in a lot of ways. But with the NBA, you've got some things that are happening that it's seen more and more. We're hearing about games being postponed, games being teams having to wait longer in between in between games to play. Stuff coming about the Wizards today about them having to wait until Sunday, it looks like, for their next game, and that's going to equal out to a 13-day layover from their last game. So, I guess just in general, there's been a lot of talk about what the NBA can do or just, judging their approach, that trying to go on the fly and try to pick up games as it goes along. In you guys' opinion, what do you think about how the NBA has approached this year? Are they making the right decision by themselves and by their players? And, are we going to have to do something drastic maybe by the playoffs and formulate another bubble? And, what do you guys think about that?
Man, when I look at the current state, how these games being affected and impacted by COVID, it's getting ugly, and it's getting to a point where I think the NBPA and the NBA are gonna have to come together at the table and figure out how can they find a way to just get through not only the first half of the season but the second half if they're not going to go into a bubble at least into the playoffs at some point, depending on how these cases shake out. Because they're gonna like when I look at things right now, the rosters, they have to, like, you got guys and teams coming out here with no more than like 8 and 9 players on certain
Yeah.
nights. It's kind of resembling to like being over a pro environment and wondering who gonna show up one day, who's not gonna be able to show one day due to the COVID situation and the pandemic at large. It's really impacting the product as well.
Man. Gabe, do you think that the roster should be extended? Maybe 2 or 3 more players on each roster?
I definitely do. And I definitely feel like if teams are smart, they can use this as an opportunity to get veterans on cheaper contracts that help mentor and groom some of these young guys that are in the league that are looking for leadership and way to get to the next level. Because although you have a lot of great coaches in the league and brilliant minds, players are able to connect with players in ways that coaches aren't able to necessarily get hold to them. And I think that would really be a huge asset in a time like this where, people are catching this virus by the day and you don't know who's going to be on the floor with you one night to the next.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I think this is bad. This is bad. It looks real bad, but from all reports, this is what Adam Silver and the NBA were planning for. That rush or that holiday period, them coming back and this kind of outbreak taking place. This is the reason why half the schedule was released so they can make those accommodations moving forward. So I think right now, and again, this is a virus. This is a pandemic. So I don't want to try to sound insensitive because these are human beings too. They're not just NBA players, man. But as long as this thing doesn't continue into February the way that it's been in January, I think that they'll be okay. The NBA will be okay. And then when the playoffs start back up, I'm sure they're going to revisit the idea of secluding these teams to make sure that this product isn't hampered or messed with too much when it really means the most, to Gabe's point.
Yeah. Hey, Josh, you got anything on this?
Yeah, to piggyback off of what everybody said. I agree with everybody on that. I think at this point, if I'm Adam Silver, I'm really trying to think about a plan B or C option, just in case. Not just because of the fact that, we're obviously in a pandemic and everything, and we're still just trying to figure out how this vaccine is going to work. When you're talking about trying to distribute the vaccine and who's going to get it first, who's going to get it, and who's going to get, that order roster of who's going to get this vaccine.
Well, Barkley say they should get it before doctors and stuff, for
Well, see, that was not a point of contention, but that was something that Adam Silver, I thought, was really being careful with. He didn't want the NBA and its players to jump the line from healthcare workers and senior citizens and people that would be more susceptible to really devastating effects from this virus. So that's not a slippery slope, but I know they're being very cautious about how they want to proceed with that vaccine.
Yeah, for sure. That's something that has to be obviously discussed and figured out where the NBA fits and all that. So for athletes to, play the roles that they play in, especially from an entertainment perspective, when a number one type of revenue generating type of field, yeah, you got to figure out how you're going to take care of your players so you can keep bringing that money in. But on top of that, at the same time, is a reporter. You only have a vaccine for one strand. There's another strand reported that's supposed to be coming our way soon. So we may be back in that same position again. How you gonna combat that? So that's so I'm all for doing if you can work, if you can make your money, do what you're supposed to do. But at the same time, you're talking about virus already so deadly. And you're just now getting this vaccine situation taking place, and you only have a solution for one part of a virus. And this is a virus that mutates. So it's mutating into a whole nother stronger strand that we just now finding out about. I don't know if you can keep this up if this thing keeps mutating and you have no real solidification as far as how to handle the virus from spreading. unless it is like a bubble situation, which is very, very expensive for owners that don't really want to spend. That's something I think over time you just have to really monitor, and I hope Adam Silver is cognizant of that moving forward as his plan continues to, unfold the way that it is.
And I know they ramped up their efforts, man. I think guys are only supposed to be leaving their hotel rooms when they're traveling only for the games, for shoot-arounds, practice. I know they're limiting the amount of outsiders that can be around the team, like when they're traveling as well. The whole handshake, chopping it up after the game thing. I know it sounds silly, like what y'all just been playing, sweating on each other, bleeding, elbowing, scratching, clawing. But I guess it had to be said still, though. Like, we don't want you guys doing anything more than what you're being asked to do on the court. So we'll see what happens, man. How hopefully, knock on wood, this thing doesn't get any worse than it's already gotten for the NBA. Because if this bleeds into February or the better part of February, that's when it would seem that things would really have to, ramp up even further in terms of the efforts to mitigate this situation.
Yeah, it's just a trip to me. Like, the NBA set off all the closing of major sports in North America, back in March, and all that took was Gobert coughing on spitting on a couple of mics, and now they're doing this whole seat of their pants thing. I know it's circumstantial, that why they're doing this, but you can look too at like some arenas letting fans in, and I looked at a game the other day. I think it was in Utah where I was like, y'all got a few too many people up in that stadium, man. I don't know what y'all doing, but we'll see what happens. But I don't know if they're handling this the best way as a league, and you gotta allow some freedom for your member franchises, because they all have different areas and that where the standards are different in their particular regions or metropolitan areas. But as a league, y'all got to get on some sort of unified thing, man, because the league, the season could teeter, pretty soon. You can't have one of, even if they get towards the end, competitively, how's it going to look if you got a team that may have a half a dozen less games played than some of the other teams, especially if you're trying to do these play-in tournament stuff and all this thing. Like, it's going to be some stress involved in that for the league and how they determine things. I don't know. It's going to be interesting to see.
And not to mention too, just a brief point, the Olympics for 2021 just got postponed again.
Yeah, so, but they need to cancel that. Japan is sounding like they may be out the door, actually. But yeah, I know what you said, Josh.
Yeah, so if they already shutting that thing down, and that was supposed to be something that athletes were supposed to play even after this season, and that's with no pushbacks. I mean, it's just something that we just got to keep in a real perspective. I hope it doesn't get to the point where the NBA season gets shut down, all that type of stuff. But you already got people canceling events even into next year or even later this year.
Yeah, it's not out. It's not out of it's not out of hand to say or imagine that happening, and transitioning a little bit now over to the college game. Like, you're seeing whole programs shut their stuff down. I saw yesterday, I think Villanova played their first game in like 27 days, and they're a top ranked team, but they, to have a holdover like that, that's pretty crazy. You have teams like DePaul, whose season might as well have been shut down. They've only played 6 games and they haven't played them very well. But you look at how they've been impacted by COVID, and the thing that made me want to talk about college this week was I saw the whole thing about Duke, Carolina, and Kentucky all being out the top 25 for the first time in like any of our lifetimes. I got a athletic report up here that says it only mentions Carolina and Duke, being out of the top 25 for the first time since '82, which is probably all of our lifetimes besides Drew, barely. And
I'm 83. I'm 83, man.
what you say?
I'm 83, so that's even the
83. Oh yeah, well, it just got you too. Yeah, but it's like I put it in our caption like on YouTube. It's just a weird college basketball season, and it's funny. Like Gabe, you mentioned like the whole pro-am thing earlier. It's really like that with college. Like you know, what was funny, like really in the early part of the season, the non-conference part of the season, they were really getting getting games together like a couple days before they would play. Like games would get canceled, and one school would holler at another school, be like, "Are y'all free on Friday? Oh, let's run one." You know, they were really doing that back in November and December, and now it's a little bit more organized now that they're in the conference season, but it's still, I don't know how much is being proven right now, by the way that they're going about things. And when you look at competitively, a lot of people who follow the college game, they're saying it's pretty much Baylor and Gonzaga and the rest of the field. So I don't know how much y'all have paid attention to college, and also like a lot of people, if you're focusing on anything, you're focusing on individuals right now, like the kid down in Oklahoma State, Cunningham, the projected #1 pick, or Jalen Suggs out in Gonzaga, and focusing on individuals, as opposed to teams right now, because what is this season going to mean as far as team competition right now, But I don't know. Y'all got any thoughts on the whole college scene right now?
So I haven't paid a ton of attention to college ball. I watched probably just because they've been on like CBS and what is it? Was it Channel 50? They had some of the Illinois games on Saturdays or Sunday. Whenever they play, like I've caught Gonzaga and Illinois a couple times. But my first
32 probably, yeah.
32, yeah. So my first reaction, random. 32 has the old NBA on.
Oh yeah, I hate that. I hate that.
It threw me off. It threw me off completely.
But the old NBA on NBC thing, they have no right to use that.
They ain't got the Masters.
Now they bought the Masters, but they shouldn't be using that. They should be somewhere ready to knock their heads off, man.
Yeah, but no,
do something original, Fox.
My first reaction was, okay, these teams are out of the top 25. I wonder how many of these teams' main guys are freshmen compared to the teams that are in the top 25. Because, those are blue bloods. They reload every year, so there's not a whole lot of continuity. And, the Gonzagas usually keep some guys 2, 3, sometimes 4 years. Sure. But I didn't have the time to, scan all these teams. But that was just the first thing that came to my mind, just figuring out or wondering if them being out of the top 25 is just due to them a lack of cohesion between like the freshmen, maybe even the sophomores that they got playing for them.
Well, Duke more so than ever, Duke is relying on one and done guys. So I'm guessing that may be an issue with them. But I don't know. Yeah, like I don't know. Duke wasn't really playing. They really haven't played that well at all this year. And
they're not playing.
Yeah. And I don't know how much of it is COVID though, or is it just an off year? And Carolina, they've had some down years too in recent years. So you could say the same with them. But Illinois, I remember they went into Cameron and whooped them pretty early in early December. They had that ACC Big Ten challenge, and Duke didn't look too good then. So I don't know.
Yeah, I think Duke. I think Duke was one of the few schools, if not the men's. If it wasn't the men's program, it's for sure the women's program that actually said we're not playing this year. Like we're going to stop all that from taking place. And there's a few college big time programs that have actually went on that, so that makes sense as far as those components per se. I think for me, two quick things. If for big programs that have these freshmen returning, they have that like you mentioned, rely on freshmen to keep things afloat and bring that continuity before they go to the pros. If anything, this could actually boost the competition for college basketball moving forward after this season, because most likely they're probably going to stay unless you're like for sure a top lottery pick. They'll come back and stay, and if they come back and stay, you got the new freshman class coming in, and that bolsters your lineup to where now you're talking about real competitive basketball next year. That prime example is Kentucky when they had the Harrison brothers. I think Julius Randle was on that team, and a lot of those guys that could have went pro in that season before, they came back and they messed around and went to the championship game before they lost to UConn. So that could be a benefit for big time programs like that, especially the Dukes and the Carolinas that need to bring back to some relevancy within their French historical program. So I think that could be beneficial. But transitioning to my second point is the fact of the mental health component of these athletes. The fact that they're going through so much at one time with the pandemic, and even some of these athletes either catching COVID or having close family members and friends that have caught COVID or died from this horrible virus. That takes a toll. You talking about DePaul? For one of my classes, we covered the Butler DePaul game, and Coach Leto in the press conference, he talked about how he had to change his coaching style because of the insensitivities that's going on in the locker room that not many people know. He had to change part of his coaching style because of that. He had to be sympathetic to a point where the normal Dave Leto, the way he may normally would coach, he can't even do that this year. He had to change up his way and his tone of teaching players different components of basketball, and part of it is because of off the locker room issues and what goes on in that locker room, especially with this pandemic. And that's coming from a program where they're still trying to get themselves together conference wise, but they're in the same conference as Villanova. They're in the same conference as the Butlers. They're in the same conference as these other top tier teams that have struggled with the pandemic as well. So I think we have to really be cognizant of the mental health aspect of what these athletes are going through, and how literally each player, if there's no family around, that coaching staff, that head coach, is the dad on that campus for them. That is the one that they're going to go to get to let out their issues that they deal with, and they're probably seeing a lot of psychologists within that realm to help them get through these mental health issues that they may be dealing on and off the court. So for them to even go to that and even play games while going through all that, that's something that's, especially you're talking about freshmen that are like 18 years old dealing with this stuff. That's a pretty big, significant thing that you have to give credit to, but also be cognizant of the fact that there's a lot more than we think that's going on behind these locker rooms outside of just the virus.
Sure. Gabe, you got any thoughts?
I have a lot of thoughts on that. I think it's a myriad of factors as to why a lot of these blue bloods aren't in the top 25, like, for the first time all at once. If I can recall when it was the draft, I think this was the first draft that we had last year in 20 years where it wasn't a single player from Kentucky, Carolina, Duke, or Kansas that got selected in the lottery. Since 2000. And I think one of the reasons why that is because a lot of these coaches that are Hall of Fame coaches, by the way, such as Roy Williams, John Calipari, and so many others, they have been beaten by the transfer portal. The transfer portal has opened up a way for these college programs to really compete and take their programs from being like a bottom dweller into like the top 25 or top 15 in the country. If you take a program like University of Houston, for instance, right now, that is among like the top 10 or 15 in the country right now. They won as a byproduct of getting most of their top guys off of the transfer portal and keeping most of their in-state guys home. And as a result, they're finding a lot of success with that. I think with Cal, it was at the beginning of the last decade getting the one and done recruits. And he did that for about several straight years. But then you surpassed him in that regard. Like
Mm.
Cal used to have a top 2 recruiting class damn near every year. He
Yep.
still gets top 5 recruiting classes, but they're not as strong as they once used to be. And then you add that onto the fact, like Josh said, you got a lot of, freshmen, young first players coming together, and they haven't even had a chance to really like do the traditional rigors of the program, such as having a night madness, having camp with one another to break in and train and learn what guys like the ball here and there and so forth. That definitely a program, but I think a lot of these heads are gonna have to adjust to how the game itself is changing and how you have to expand and expound upon the ways in which you go after talent.
Definitely. Definitely. And you look, you talk about too, like I said, starting all this off from who's not in the top 25, who's not at the top of the rankings right now. You got a lot of teams who have had layoffs, who had years in between not being ranked or being very competitive, and teams who we typically don't hear from, who are scattered throughout these rankings right now. You look at it like an Iowa being ranked number 4. It's been a while since they've been ranked that high. And Houston, they're in the top 10. Texas Tech. Although Texas Tech's had some good teams recently, but you know, Virginia, West Virginia, and Virginia Tech. I can't remember last time I seen all 3 of them in the rankings, but like looking down, Minnesota, Alabama, Missouri, Clemson, Illinois was pretty high. They was high as number 2 this year. They're number 22 right now. Unfortunately, I think they fallen back to earth a bit, but Connecticut is back in the top 25. UCLA, St. Louis rounds out the top 25. So, but like you say, Gabe, like the freedom, and that's something that I think we should applaud. The players having more freedom to move about. To move about, much like the coaches can, and all the people who make money off of them. They at least let the kids have the ability to play at go to schools where they feel they could get playing time and make the most of their playing careers, and have that freedom through the transfer portal. But like you say, it makes an impact. It's not just these several blue chip teams, blue blood teams hoarding all the talent anymore and being able to say, well, you can't move anywhere. We got 3 guys ahead of you on the roster, but you ain't gonna be able to move nowhere. And if you do want to move, you got to go somewhere to our our approval. Players can move about more now, and you see them moving to more of those other schools like Alabama's and Texas Tech's and Houston's and Illinois and DePaul. I know they picked up the kid Liberty from Javon Freeman, as I say, from Liberty from
Valpo.
Valpo, yeah. So it, that,
Oh, yeah.
yeah. So it's like a lot more schools are eating, we should say, to that degree when it comes to talent, and that could be a good thing. Like Josh said, that could be a good thing in regards to holding over talent and being able to let some guys go into the upper class who you may not have had in previous years. And Illinois really benefited off of that this year, because you had both their top 2 guys, Io and Kofi, both at they declared for the draft, but they were able, because of the draft rules, they were able to come back into school even after the initially declaring for the draft, and they come back and they made Illinois to a top 20 team, arguably, where if they would have went to the draft and they probably wouldn't have got drafted too high, they would have started their careers not in the way that they want, and Illinois would have been lesser forward too, because they wouldn't have as much talent on board. They wouldn't be as deep. And really, you look at Io. He's really he looks like a first round pick this year. The way he's played. So I'm looking forward to seeing. He probably should definitely stay in the draft this year, even though, like Gabe says, this is going to be a deep draft. But he looks much more like a number one pick this year than he did last year.
This gonna add a little bit to what you guys have already said. I wonder moving forward, like how much the G League and top recruits trying to go to HBCUs, how much that might affect these blue bloods moving forward too. You know, you got Jalen Green and Isaiah Todd who went the G League route, Mikey Williams who will be going supposed to be going the HBCU route, and another kid I think is taking that route as well. I can't think of his name off the top of my head, but you got some things kind of pulling and tugging at these perennial powerhouse colleges, man. We'll see what happens moving forward. We'll see what happens.
I like to see that too. You know, let's say more flexibility, more options for these kids, man. Just they don't to force them to have to do something past the age of 18 doesn't make much sense. Let them formulate their own destiny, and having the G League be a legitimate option. Unfortunately, this year there's not going to be much beyond. There may be some showcase tournaments or something they have. A lot of teams aren't even fielding, G League teams this year. We know the Bulls are among them, but hopefully when COVID passes, the G League will be much more of a thing where you'll have all the teams connected, and you have players who can, sign two-way contracts, or players jumping out of high school and maybe like say spending a year with a G League team and then going into the draft or whatever. It's like I say, more options, more ways to skin the cat, as it were, and get that money instead of just being held up and held up for hostage by a college program that's not going to give you anything. But yeah, I was gonna go into the Bulls, but we've been here long enough, so we'll hold off next week to talk a bit on the Bulls. But they've been competing, and they've been doing all right. They're going it'll be they'll see the Lakers again on Saturday, so it'll be good to size them up after that game as well. So we'll hold off on the Bulls talk for next week. But before we go though, Josh, you want to tease us a little bit about this upcoming piece you wanted to you came at me with today, talking about the Atlanta Dream. Really a team that's been really got itself in the middle of this moment of politics and social change going on in Georgia, and they were connected to that awful senator Loeffler, who was trying to state senator who was trying to run for U.S. Senate and got shut down in the post by Raphael Warnock. But a lot of that started with the players, those dream players, standing up, because that lady was saying she wasn't down with Black Lives Matter. She wasn't down with the movement. That's not what real Americans do, to her opinion and everything. And those dream players said, no, we're not having that. You're a co-owner on this team, but we're not gonna abide by what you say. And that's really was a key part of the movement to keep her out of power down there in Georgia, and it worked. And now they're up for sale. And the reports have been that Loeffler is not going to be involved in any reselling of the team. And there have been people who have come out, celebrities and of the like, LeBron and other powerful black people who have mentioned interest in wanting to get a piece of the dream. And I'm guessing your piece is going to go into all of that and more. I'm imagining, right?
Yeah, it's going to go into all of that, and who I ideally think should be in that ownership group, especially one particular person who literally it's been a while. I want to say going on 4 or 5 years now, started literally this entire movement, and that's Colin Kaepernick.
Okay. Well, I'm not surprised. You know how to work Colin Kaepernick into a column. I know that. But
That's a hell of
that'll
a
be a good. Yeah, that'll be interesting. An interesting way to
That's
get him
interesting.
involved is in major sports again. Yeah, so I'm looking forward to that. You'll be able to read that soon on weareregalradio.com. But yeah, that's we'll talk some more about that as it goes along, and hopefully when we find out who does take control of the dream, maybe we'll talk some more about that with Chris, our guy Chris, and maybe some other folks. But I don't know. Hey, you guys got anything else that's on your minds before I sign us off?
Nah, not really, Kyle, man. Not really, man. Not really.
Yeah. Gary, man, glad to have you back on with us, man. Appreciate you filling in for Chris. And I say you're not doing as much writing as you have last in the past, but definitely still a great follow on social media, on Twitter in particular. You see the tag there. Anything you want to say to the people before you go off?
No, just first and foremost, like always, man, appreciate you for having me. And I'm always on Twitter, talking about NBA games, watching games each and every night. So, like you said, my name right there. Anybody want to follow me, create dialogue on the game, I'm always down to do that.
Definitely. Like I say, follow Gabe. If you want some good, intelligent basketball talk on Twitter, that's some of y'all ain't necessarily into that, but you act like you into the NBA, but you be on some other stuff talking about the NBA. But if you want to talk intelligently about the NBA, Gabe is a guy to follow on Twitter. Josh, you got anything, man? Like I said, we
Not
got
much,
the
man.
post coming up on the site. Did you got a new ITS coming up?
ITS is gonna come next week. Working with getting Sean from Sources podcast. Sean, great friend of the show. Dean Davis. He's gonna come on next week. So that's what we're talking to get that in, going in for next week, talking Bulls, NBA, all that good stuff. And it's something that you guys definitely do not want to miss. So be on the lookout for that next week.
Okay, cool. It's not basketball, but check out what he did with the guys from Channel 9, Jared Payton and Josh Friedman is up now. You can see that on you see the videos on our YouTube and or listen to it on WARR on Anchor. He did a great job with that. But like I said, we got keep rocking with us on all our platforms. We'll be back next week with another fresh episode. More on the NBA. Keep rocking, and we're gonna keep it bouncing, man. Keep it going. Regardless of how many games are called off, we'll have something to talk about, and we'll keep it going. But pleasure talking with you, brothers, once again. Like I say, gratitude, appreciation to everybody who's streamed us live and who listens to us on demand. Keep on and keep it on. And like I said, keep bouncing, and we'll talk to y'all next week.